In this video, we'll be replacing the heater core hoses as well as the expansion tank hose on my 2003 Saab 9.3. Let's get started. When I did my video with all the timing work, the water pump, etc., I noticed that a couple of these hoses on the underside were starting to kind of seep coolant. So I figured these hoses are all probably original from 2003. They're now 20 years old, so why not replace them as a form of preventative maintenance? All three of these hoses are in the same general area, so I'm hoping that means our job shouldn't be too difficult. What you're looking at right here are our two heater core hoses, which as we get better access later in the video, you'll see go into the general area of our thermostat housing. And then secondly is our big hose from the coolant expansion tank, which feeds down right into the center of the screen there. First thing I want to do is take the coolant cap off and then get underneath the car and drain the radiator. There are a few 8mm holding on this under tray. I get asked this question a lot. How do you drain the radiator on these cars? And it's right there. It is just a little drain plug that we need to turn to release all the coolant out of the radiator and ideally most of the coolant system. While we let that drain, I'm going to remove the turbo heat shield. Those two bolts out, you can reach down behind here and unhook the clip on the turbo to remove this the rest of the way. To give us some better access, I'm going to pop out the coolant tank. There's just two metal tabs that you can bend. And a little sensor on the bottom that you'll want to unhook to prevent from breaking it. Our coolant is still draining, but since we have access to it right now, we can undo our first hose clamp right there. Now I'll remove the other clamp for that hose. So because the hose might be just kind of seized on there, I'm taking my hose clamp pliers and just kind of squeezing the hose around where it connects to the thermostat housing and twisting it to hopefully break it loose and make it easier to get off. Next, let's tackle our first heater core hose. Having the same problem we did with the other hose, so I'm going to try cutting it. Oh yeah, it's really hard to get on camera just because of its location. But the last heater core hose, can't miss it. It's right under the expansion tank hose. These ones are actually fairly simple to pop off. It's just a little like quick connect thing. Since I'm in here, there's one last item I want to tackle. We are under the car now, and that is a little seal on the thermostat housing that I didn't know existed when we did the water pump job. So just to be safe, I'm going to replace that, because it probably should have been replaced during the water pump job. You can see the nipples from the hoses we already took off, but there's two bolts on the bottom and then two bolts on the top that are 10 mil that I'm going to remove to pull that off. I haven't been including this work because it's not really the title and subject of the video, but if you are doing this, just a heads up, it is extraordinarily difficult. So getting all four of those bolts out wasn't awful, but then we disconnected the coolant feed line, that line that's wrapped in heat shielding right there. And so now I have this kind of popped off, and it's just so hard to access anything. So to clean the surface, I've been using this. I'm about ready now to try to remove the actual gaskets. This actually forms into being square shaped. I'll put a picture on the screen of what that looks like, because I was thankfully able to find a picture of the back side of the thermostat housing on the internet. My only other options beyond this would be to remove these other couple last hoses, and most importantly, that crossover tube. That crossover tube is extremely difficult to remove. It just takes so much force because those O-rings in there are so tight. So that's what I'm really trying to avoid doing, to avoid taking out the entire housing. So I think I'm gonna be able to fish out the old gasket and hopefully stick this one in. Thankfully it's ribbed, so it should fit in there pretty easily. Well, that was quite difficult to fish out, but honestly, the gasket, unsurprisingly, is in pretty good condition. You can see right by where the claws are grabbing it out, it was kind of ripped, just a hair. So again, probably just a good little piece of preventive maintenance. But now I'm going to somehow clean down in there and install our new one. Let's go, check that out. We got it in. I'm just gonna do a little bit of last minute cleaning down here, and then we'll reinstall. That seal has been replaced. It was quite difficult to get the thermostat housing to line up to the block. So you can see I got a bit creative here. I had to pull it up and to the driver's side. So that was kind of my solution. But now that it's in, I can cut those zip ties and we can get back to installing our new hoses. I transferred all of the hose clamps and clips from the old hoses onto the new ones. Our new heater core hoses do come with these metal clips, but I always hold on to all my spare bolts and things, so I've put those in here just for some reason I ever need them. So we'll start with our bottom hose here on the bottom of the thermostat housing. This heater core hose goes on the left side, and I see I didn't get it on the whole way. All right, now it's safe to say it's on there. Gave it a good tug, and now I'll install the hose clamp on the bottom. With that on, I'll tackle our second heater core hose. And lastly, our coolant expansion hose. If you're wondering where I purchased all of these hoses, they're from Saab parts. Not a sponsored video or anything, but Saab parts does fantastic work for our community with all the parts that they offer at great prices and amazing customer service. So again, not sponsored by them, but just a shout out to them for doing awesome work. All right, got that hose on, bit of a tight fit. That one was probably the easiest of the three. And then insert our connector for the coolant level. And just one last check, making sure all 6 hose clamps are on. All hoses are on as they should be. The last 2 things we need to install are the turbo heat shield and the under tray. Not going to do that yet. What we'll do now is fill everything with coolant and let it run and hope it doesn't leak. We didn't drain the heater core, but since we did take off the heater core hoses, when I do start the car, I'll also put on the heat to help cycle in coolant through there and hopefully get rid of all the air bubbles that are in there. It's about time we get rid of this old coolant, so I went out, bought some more GM DexCool. This is the correct coolant to run in these cars. So I bought some concentrate and then some distilled water to add in there. We'll add it in 50-50. The heat has been turned on to hopefully help us get some coolant into those heater core lines. And if you're wondering, Yes, this is a new generation Saab 9 5-gauge cluster that I retrofitted into this car. If you want to see the video on how to do that, click up here in the top corner. But now it is just a waiting game, letting the system kind of cool itself. Like I can tell, there's absolutely no coolant in any of these hoses yet, so it's going to be quite a while and it's going to drink a lot more coolant. At this point, we're just checking for leaks, making sure our coolant level is good after a couple of drives of the car. But that's all I've got for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my merchandise if you want to help support the channel some more, and I'll see you all next time.